This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. The roof of the South Stand at Starch Park is some 19 metres above the pitch, the same height as 11 Aidan Connolly's. But as we all know, there's only one Aidan Connolly, and so you'd be much better off with Dynamic Industrial Services. DIS specialise in working at height, offering a range of services including maintenance, inspection and repair. To find out more, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk.
Hello and welcome back to the Oh No 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 podcast, where tonight we're back with another quickfire League Cup double. I'm your host tonight, Robbie, and I'm delighted firstly to be joined by Mr. Leslie Maven. How you doing, Leslie?
As those of you who are watching will see, I'm freezing. I am wearing fleece-lined slippers and 2 layers, and I have the heating on because it is 10 degrees inside in Oban.
And Carol Smith, what's your opinion on the temperatures right now?
I am currently 32 in my office, having to stand, for all those watching, normally I sit, because it's sweating buckets. It's the completely opposite. I am now debating, do I need my air conditioning on this evening to sleep?
That's the Scottish equivalent of, for translation out there, the Scottish equivalent of putting on your heating in the winter, for those who are unfamiliar. And Carol, I believe you had some company over in Barcelona to watch the game with?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of Dot, the supporters director. She was in Spain, she was in Madrid, and then Girona, and then she popped down to Barcelona, and we watched the game on Tuesday night, and went to the Barcelona Football Club Museum on Wednesday. Yeah, and I took my Rovers scarf and wore it all the way around the museum because it was freezing because it had free air conditioning. So swings and roundabouts.
Barcelona might be all well and good, but they don't have Graham Kilgour on the tannoy, as I'm sure you might have heard from Raith TV, which was a spectacle to behold. Tuesday night we had Stranraer at home. There was only 3 changes in the lineup. Euan Murray made, Ross Matthews came in for Sean Byrne, Josh Mullen replaced Sam Stanton, and then finally Jack Hamilton came up top to replace Callum Smith. Stranraer, they apparently named 5 changes in their lineup, so there wasn't really any major shocks there, Carol, that Euan Murray decided to rotate. What were your thoughts when you heard the lineup come through?
It's to be expected. It's the League Cup, but it's still pre-season feeling, so it's given everybody a run out. So yeah, I wasn't surprised with the lineup. I think it's a bit difficult choice. Do you pick Byrne or Matthews, or is it which one do you start with, which one do you finish with? Maybe is a better question. The same with Stanton and Connolly. Obviously, Connolly scored a hat-trick the previous game, so you can't really leave him out. But how do you make a choice between Stanton and Connolly?
Yeah, well, coming to a bit later in the podcast, we'll come on to sort of managers' dilemmas, because I think he's been put in a real problem spot with the wingers now, given how well they're all doing. Leslie, there wasn't a return for Paul Hanlon into the squad. I know that people were maybe hoping that he might have made a bit of a return. So, based off Euan Murray's interviews, it sounds like we're sort of just keeping him safe for now. So what were your thoughts about that? Is that the right move from Euan Murray? Just take it slowly, given the injury history that we've had before, bearing in mind last season with what happened with Russian players back.
Fast forward to October. Scott Brown is back in defence. Fordyce is injured. Paul Hanlon is still about 2 weeks away from his Raith Rovers debut. I'm only kidding. I don't think we're anywhere near that level yet. I think it is eminently sensible, though, that we don't take any chances in the League Cup. If Hanlon's not 100%, this is not a time to be risking him. You could argue with Watson, that was one of the things that we had trouble with, was that Airdrie game where we did rush him back a bit. So when you've got perfectly good options like Murray and Fordyce and even Dick on the bench, it is absolutely eminently sensible, completely the right thing to do. We know that Hanlon had a run out in some of the friendlies. We know what he's capable of. You're not going to have any difficulty, like Duncan was saying the other week, integrating him with Stevenson, given they've played 500 games together. So, all around that is just an extremely sensible thing to do, as long as he's not picked up the Keith Watson 2 weeks away bug.
Yeah, well, I don't think I could stomach that, so we'll move swiftly on. And swift it was indeed, Raith Rover taking the lead after only a few minutes on the clock. I think it was 4 minutes in, where Kieran Freeman released Josh Mullen down the wing. A really nice ball across to Jack Hamilton, who was in that area that we all hope to see him. And I know that we'd spoken a bit at length about that before, just wanting to see him as sort of like a 6-yard box striker. And he did that with ease on Tuesday night. So, Carol, firstly, positive to see Jack Hamilton open his account for the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's what we've all been waiting for. It was 4 minutes in, and you're like, this is it. This is what we want. And I think, obviously, we'll talk about it, but later on in the game, I think we were missing him because there was definitely some chances that were 6 yards out of the goal, and it would have been Hamilton that finished them. But obviously, he went off earlier than we expected. Yeah, definitely good to see him on the score sheet.
Yeah, I know that we've spoken a bit about, and it's quite easy to sort of conflagrate this and sort of make it bigger than it actually is, but I know that we'd sort of said that Jack Hamilton maybe had a few questions about him. If you listen to sort of the wider support in terms of keeping your sort of ear to the ground. But yeah, he absolutely just smashed the ball home. Nice and easy finish for him, but he did have to be in the right position to get there. I think the build-up play is also worth taking a point for, Leslie, taking a wee bit of time to look at. So you have Kieran Freeman doing really well to release Josh Mullen down the wing. So just the importance of sort of this Rovers side in terms of being aggressive down the wings. Do you think that was sort of a good showcase of it? Because really, when you look at, we'll come to our second goal obviously in a little bit, but yeah, the importance of sort of being aggressive down those flanks really paid off there.
Yes, so if you look at the tail end of last season, we became pretty solid defensively, but the trade-off for that was that we were offering virtually nothing from either of the full-back positions. And so we saw in some of the previous games we've had in the pre-season and indeed in the Stirling game, we've seen how good Lewis Stevenson's been down the left. Kieran Freeman had been a bit of an unknown quantity. But yeah, great to see him kind of get involved, getting forward, and playing it through to Josh Mullen. And we know that the quality that Mullen brings. So great. I mean, one thing I will say about Freeman, and we can maybe talk a little bit about him later, is it kind of puts me in the mind of Ryan Nolan when he came in a couple of seasons ago, and also Ross Millen, in that you can see that through no fault of his own, this is a guy who's not maybe been playing a lot of football recently because of where he's come in from Ireland, because of injuries and things like that. And you can, and I don't mean that to be too critical or too disrespectful to Kieran, but you just have to bear in mind, this is a guy who's maybe just going to need a wee bit longer to get himself back up to speed, especially with the Scottish game. But no, it was great to see him getting forward, feeding in Josh Mullen, who then put a really super ball in. I did have palpitations for a minute, I have to say, because when Hamilton hit that, for a minute I was thinking about Gregory Taddy at Pittodrie. It was on
Still hit the back of the net, Les. Still hit the back of the net.
He did. It was on an upward trajectory. Maybe not the same kind of upward trajectory that Gregory Taddy was on, which I think, had he been about a foot further away from the goal, would have ended up in the grounds of the philosophy department at Aberdeen Uni. It wasn't like that, but it was a good hit into the roof of the net. And we're all thinking at that point, yes, here we go.
Well, if he follows the same career trajectory as Gregory Taddy, within 4 years we can expect him to be popping up in Europe. So if you want to do that, Jack Hamilton, I'm not going to grudge it. If it was with Rovers, I'm definitely not going to grudge it.
We'll just skip the bit when we'll skip the bit when he punts Herbalife. We don't want any Herbalife dealers around here.
It's not for me to say, but if that's the way that people want to take their life outside of the game of football, then absolutely fine. It's not my area to comment on. About pyramid schemes. So, Carol, next up, just to check with you, that was obviously another quick start for the Rovers after the Stirling game and Stranraer game. And again, it's without being disrespectful to either of these teams. Down in League 2, it's going to be a bit of a different calibre of opposition when we're playing Championship teams, especially our next two opponents, with a top flight team and another Championship team. But yeah, are you hopeful that that's sort of a start of a trend there, maybe, that we're going to be coming out the gates quite quickly with matches?
last season? Was it how many games did we win by more than one goal, and how long were we waiting for us to score a goal, maybe late on in the second half? So if we can flip it round that we're nice and comfortable in the first 20 minutes, I would be very happy. Yeah. No, it's a change. It's something that's different. Yeah, I think it's a good, positive thing.
Yeah,
and I've had a cat appear in my room out of nowhere.
It wouldn't surprise me. Seeking sanctuary from the scorching Barcelona heat, apparently. We're not going to get any respite there. So yeah, the first half, just a few sort of talking points about there. Big Kev had a couple of saves from sort of half chances that Stranraer hit. Josh Mullen broke free and had one that was just wide of the goal. And then really the next major point came when Jack Hamilton went down off the ball. And I think if you watch the Stranraer TV footage, I was watching that for going back, and he it looked like he would maybe been toiling for a little bit. But yeah, just to sort of say, obviously that one's a bit disappointing, Carol, in terms of seeing Jack Hamilton going down, and just your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he was just getting in his stride. He was going into scoring a goal, and like I said earlier, I think that we would have had a few more in the back of the net if he'd been still up front, because there was definitely some chances. But Smith did well when he came on, and it's good to have those options. Your heart doesn't sink as much when you see someone go down, and it's good that we've got someone else to replace him to give him the time to recover and rest, because that seems to be what we've got this season. Is we've got a depth of squad that if someone does get a little niggle, we're not desperately needing them. We're not like, right, okay, we desperately need this player because we've got nobody else in that position.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned and I'm disappointed, and I'm sure that he is disappointed because it was a great start, but not panicking yet.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I know that we'd spoken before this game about sort of Ian Connolly's interview where he mentioned about sort of the players have already had their expectations set, that there's probably going to be quite a lot of rotation in the squad. So Callum Smith came on, and almost immediately he gets on the score sheet as well with that sort of one-on-one chance. So just talk us through that, Leslie. Good move through. Brilliant ball from Dylan Easton, and just your thoughts on it. So
glorious ball through. I'm having the same problem that I sometimes have with games where I consume La Chouffe during the game. For those of you who are not familiar, it's a very strong Belgian beer, and it causes selective memory loss. So last season in the pod, we were discussing the Arbroath game, and I actually had no recollection of Jack Hamilton's final goal, and became aware of this as we were discussing it. So thankfully, I did refresh my memory before we came on, because I couldn't remember much of that. But in my memory, Hamilton had gone down. The next thing I knew, Callum Smith was through. No, but yeah, went back there to lovely ball through from Dylan Easton. I think that must have been Callum Smith's first touch when he came on. I reckon if that wasn't his first touch, he may well have scored. You could argue, yes, he could have done a bit better, but no, great presence of mind. We see the pace that he has. We saw last season, we know that Callum Smith is really good at one-on-ones. Usually very good. He buried a few of them last season. He was a little bit unlucky not to get another one through there. I mean, one thing I will say, I guess, well about Callum Smith is we've used the word a thankless task an awful lot when we talk about Callum Smith, and this happened again in the Stranraer game. He comes on to do something that maybe isn't top of his skill set, ploughing a lone furrow and being that lone striker up front, chasing balls down, running after things, knocking things down. That's maybe not top of his skill set, but he did that really well. Good few times, he got on the end of through balls, he got on the end of things and made a nuisance of himself. Yeah, like I say though, I think my key takeaway message from that was, if that wasn't his first touch, I think that's a goal.
Yeah, and we've spoken at great length about Callum Smith and how often he finds himself in those one-on-one positions, and a lot of the time the ball does end up on the net. So again, if you're talking like 9 times out of 10 that he's burying those, then you're absolutely fine if he's going to miss one. And ultimately, I'm sure he'll be disappointed, but at the same time, I'm sure that he'll quickly find a way past it. The goalkeeper for Stranraer, young lad Pazikis, from on loan from Rangers, so he'd had a few saves towards the end of the first half, but then really the big save came from Big Kev at the start of the second half, Carol, where he made a save with his feet. So what were your thoughts when you saw that on Raith TV?
Well, one save with his feet, shocking as it is, but good, yeah. Kev looks a little bit more confident the first couple of games, more confident on his feet, more confident with his feet. And coming out, there was another save where he punched it out as well, where it got well out. And there's a little bit more confidence with him, and I'm a little bit more confident with him this year. It's not like, oh God, don't play it to Kev's feet. Please don't play it to Kev's feet. No, definitely seeing him kick it out and seeing him save with his feet definitely gave me a bit of confidence for the season to come.
Yeah, he did that interview with Graham as part of Raith TV, and it was interesting to sort of hear like some of the comments and looking at some of the information stuff that's been pulled in terms of the media. He's sort of saying that now Robbie Thompson's sort of saying just like let the game come to you, like just take your time with things. And yeah, it was a really good save, done very, very well to sort of stay alert. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but when you're in a cup tie like that, a lot of the time it is about concentration for goalkeepers because the ball's up the other end of the pitch. Leslie, next up, Rovers hit the bar. Dylan Easton went it was a phenomenal ball in from Josh Mullins. So, it seemed at that point that it was just going to be inevitable that we were going to kick on and get another goal. So, yeah, just your thoughts on that and just in general.
So, at the Kev save, my dad messaged me and he said, that was a really big let-off, that was very poor. And then almost immediately I replied and said, aye, but that was a great ball because it was a fabulous ball in from the right. And had that been in, we would actually have been looking at a very early contender for goal of the season and another one to add to the Dylan Easton highlight reel. Lovely ball in, beautifully hit, and Jerry, I'm desperately unlucky to just hit the bar there. I think, we'd been saying in the first half as well that Easton at 10, we've not seen him do that for a wee while, or certainly not in a competitive fixture for a wee while. So, you're used to him coming in off the left and things like that, but seeing him just kind of getting back into the groove in the middle, it put me in the mind of that goal he scored against Cove in the game where we thrashed them a couple of seasons back. It put me in the mind of that, a great volley, and like you say, you just kind of thought, here we go. At this point, it's all going in one direction, and you would have thought, or at least hoped, that a second goal from that point on would have been inevitable. And then once you get the second in, it would, in theory, just become easier. However, as we know, that is categorically not what happened.
Yeah, 100%. Carol, I think it kind of goes back to your point that you mentioned earlier on. So you were saying about Callum Smith. Now, obviously, Callum Smith, one of his strongest attributes is his work rate. Like, the lad just never stops working. And buzzing about the pitch. But you actually, I don't know if it came across on Raith TV, but certainly I don't know if it's just me noticing it, but sort of like you would see Dylan Easton or Sam Stanton a lot of the time when Sam Stanton came on in terms of like being a lot more aggressive in terms of their pressing, I felt, and sort of charging down defenders and the goalkeeper when Smith had maybe gone off elsewhere. 79 minutes in, there was 3 subs that came on at once, 2 for Rovers and 1 for Stranraer. So you had Lewis Gibson replacing Josh Mullin on the wing, and then Sean Byrne came on as well for Ross Matthews. And then for Stranraer, it was Dean Hawkshaw came off and he was replaced by the lad Edgar. And then lo and behold, just 5 minutes later, having looked so comfortable in the game, and I think there was a degree of frustration within the South Stand about this because you almost got the inevitable feeling that the longer it went on, and I know it had been mentioned in our group chat as well, as comfortable as Rovers looked, you knew there was only a goal in it. And I think everyone sort of said, Stranraer are going to score at some point, and then lo and behold, it came to pass that there's a long ball that Edgar, he gives Fordyce I hate to say it, but he gets the Gascoigne treatment over Colin Hendry because he just knocked it over his head and the momentum's carrying Fordyce away. You can see he's trying his hardest to head the ball away, but he just can't get to it. And then Dunlop, who's a loanee from Airdrie, was waiting at the other side of the box. A ball just passed across and then it scored. So yeah, Carol, just your thoughts on that goal, and just, do you think Rovers were sort of, the longer the game went on, they became maybe a bit passive, or what were your thoughts on it?
I mean, on Raith TV, it looked like everyone had clumped down the right wing and Stranraer had pulled everyone out to the right. And we looked a little bit, I wouldn't even say relaxed. We knew it was coming, but we just weren't reading the game at that point. The back four weren't reading the game. They just seemed to run towards the ball and were caught out. It did feel like inevitably they were going to score or we were going to do something silly. It just, the longer it went, it turned from a League Cup game into a very dull pre-season for about 20 minutes, which just opened it up to them scoring. Well, that's how it felt on Raith TV.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think it came across in the stand that way as well. So it was just like, I think that when you're in that position, it's very difficult as a fan not to get caught up in thinking like, look, we've had all these chances, and the last thing you want to see is a situation where they do come in. And that again probably lends itself to some pressure on the team, and that you're sort of thinking, we are so close to being just getting this game over the line and getting it done. And then you're 6 points out of 6. And in the League Cup, for your first 2 games, that's a very significant advantage to have. We're going to come on to that in a little bit, talking about the other games. But yeah, just to come back to you, Leslie, even at 1-0, were you quite confident, like, almost given last season's antics of how we had the sort of summer and autumn of going on an insanely good run of scoring late goals? Were you sort of confident that with the Scottish squad that we've got, that we would still be able to kick on and win the game?
At that point, I have to say I wasn't really. And like we were just saying, you could see it coming. And we were all talking about it. 3 of us, I think, within the space of 20 seconds, put the same thing in the group chat, which is they're going to score. And when you have that many chances, let's be clear. Like, you don't have to blow teams away every week. You don't have to do what Airdrie did. You don't have to batter teams, but you do have to kind of keep a tempo up and keep going at them. And it started to become so pedestrian. And it just slowed right down. They weren't dominating us. I mean, fair play to Stranraer, they did really well. They started to get into the game and get a wee bit of a foothold. They weren't battering our goal by any means, but it just became so slow and so pedestrian that we were just thinking that they're going to score somehow. And I mean, that's all, when it's 1-0, that's all it takes, is you just need one misplaced pass, one person to slip, one wild deflection to lead to a corner, and they've got a chance to get back in the game. And that is exactly what did happen. And from that point, I'm thinking, right, now we've got to somehow find a way to speed it up again. And Lewis Gibson, I think, coming on was probably what made the change, because it set my mind thinking about something. So I'd said a couple of weeks ago in here that having effectively the same attacking lineup as a strength, and that we've got basically all the same players we had last season, we're up to bed new people in, etc., etc. I still stand by that, but I don't think it's a bad thing to have a bit of new energy and new ideas, because it just started to get very, very predictable, like I say. And Gibson came on and he adds a bit of pace, he adds something different, and that was the one bit of hope. I thought, okay, we've actually brought somebody new on now who's going to try something different, who's maybe going to react in a way that we don't expect, that the opposition that don't expect, and hopefully give us a chance to get back into the game. But yeah, that was my frustration, was just how slow we were and how kind of out of ideas we looked after we'd had a few chances.
Yeah. See, for me, with Lewis Gibson, the thing I'm very much on the Lewis Gibson hype train right now. Like, his stock is soaring to the sky, as far as I'm concerned. The thing for me is that he looks like a guy that plays, he's very gallous in terms of he's not got a fear when he's on the ball. He's not thinking, if I lose this, I'm in trouble. He's thinking, right, if I lose this, it's because I've tried something. And it's kind of Dylan Easton-esque. And you could see that, just to talk about like the equaliser, Carol. In terms of the build-up, Scott Brown plays it out of defence to Lewis Gibson, and he's got the presence of mind to get the ball forward to Callum Smith. Callum Smith then gets intercepted, ball goes out for a throw, by which point Lewis Gibson's already found himself way up the pitch in order to take it, and then gets bundled over. So automatically we've got that reaction off the back of a Stranraer attack, at which point I think every Rovers fan's saying, this could be unthinkably bad. But then, the ball gets sent in from Gibson at the free kick. Perfect delivery to everyone's favourite meathead, I've put in my notes, as he's been called before. Euan Murray just batters. It's funny watching funny watching Inside Match Day, because it looks like he was just almost running through walls to get that ball. And if you placed a dozen Stranraer or 11 Stranraer players in front of him, he would have just bodied them all out of the way, because he was not getting stopped. So just your thoughts on the winner there, and just that last minute goal to continue that trend that we enjoy in the summer and autumn of last minute goals.
I'm going to build on your description of Euan Murray. He reminded me of in Barcelona Old ladies and old men will move for two things: the metro and the queue in the supermarket. And we are talking elbows out and everything. They will go from like dottering along to, I'm going to get that, and it's elbows out and they go for it. And that was Euan Murray sitting back a little bit, and then it was, that's my ball, that's my header. Everyone get out of the way. I am having this. And yeah, and like you say, on Inside Match Day, it was just the perfect header up and right down into that net. Beautiful.
I think we are running out of very, very strange analogies to compare Euan Murray to things. Like, we've already compared him to a dog that's going off to the vet, and now Abuelos in Barcelona. So yeah, very, very strange descriptions that we've got on this podcast. But what else would you expect from such a group of eccentric characters? So yeah, I think it was just absolutely brilliant in terms of you can see that it's something that Euan Murray's definitely targeted in terms of the squad to become a bit more adept in utilising stuff like free kicks, corners and taking chances. Because even in the second half, you had ones where I think there was one where both Fordyce and Murray went for a header in the box. And I remember I said to Sandy, who sits behind me, we both just sort of said at the same time, like, they've both tried to go for that and win that at the same time. And the only reason it's not in the back of the net is because Fordyce didn't realise that Euan Murray was coming behind them, and they've just maybe just a little bit of miscommunication and just not been able to get that there. But yeah, interesting comments from Stranraer TV though. Lawrence Nelson and Brian Martin said that it was lucky Raith Rovers after the goal. Do you think we got off the hook a bit, Leslie? Or they said it was a bit lucky in terms of it was a good goal they were commenting, but the free kick was apparently very soft, and Scott Agnew was of the same opinion. So what were your thoughts? Was that a soft free kick, or were you quite confident in the referee's judgment?
I don't think it was a soft free kick. It was a free kick. There was no doubt about that. You could argue that we were lucky to get a goal so late on, having slowed down so much. If you were a Stranraer fan, you'd be gutted to be going back down the various road networks that take you to southwest Scotland, having done pretty well and put in a good shift to stay in the game. Yeah, we had chances earlier in the game, though. And I mean, like you said, I think one thing that's worth picking up on was the Stranraer keeper. And the young lad on loan from Rangers made some cracking saves. You know, some great saves from some of our chances earlier in the second half to keep them in the game. You know, we could have been out of sight had it not been for that. You know, it is always that debate. You know, is it luck, or do you kind of win games because you stay in there? I think I'll just add something as well about kind of quality of set pieces. Because, you know, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, apparently some of the chat was Airdrie were really good at set pieces last season, and that one of the rumours through the jungle drums was that Fordyce was actually the brains behind that, and I do not know if that's true. I don't know if that's true or if there's any truth to that, but that, you know, certainly we know Airdrie were very good at set pieces, and we know that Fordyce was in the Airdrie defence, and, you know, we're even now starting to see us do things a little bit differently. So it would be disingenuous to think he's not brought some of that know-how with him. Plus, you've also got Paul Hanlon in the mix now as well, who's always been good at a set piece, and actually having centre backs that are centre backs. That's, you know, who would have thought it? Not having a centre midfielder doing his very best in the centre of defence.
See, just to illustrate your point, Leslie, actually, and it actually lends itself to what you saw on the pitch, because Fordyce, there was a point midway through the first half, I think it was, where he effectively got himself on the ball and he's looking for someone to drop deep from midfield. He stopped the ball, and it's almost like he just decides to have an impromptu team talk on the ball. He's like, you here, you here, you here. And he's just gesturing at people to come to him. And people in the stand started laughing, because it's like, look, I can see where he's coming from. If he's wanting to play the ball out of defence, he does not want to just shell it long. He's wanting to sort of get into midfielders' feet. So, yeah, it's just, and that as a fan, that's actually really good to see. Just that he's willing to sort of command that and try and take control of a game and to be able to do that. So, yeah, brilliant. Just to move on to obviously there wasn't very much left in the game. There was only really sort of what looked like a very heavy tackle in Dylan Easton, which, to be fair, from the south stand, I thought was an absolute shocker. I thought it might have been a red card, but then when you watch back the Stranraer TV or Raith TV, certainly it was on the Stranraer one, and I don't know if it maybe looked a little bit worse in the stand, but the lad got a book in, and then it was pretty much full time. Euan Murray said, Carol, as it was touched on before, Euan Murray very, very candid in his post-match interview. He was like, look, we'll take the result. Very happy that we're on 6 points, but players went into their shell a little bit. What were your thoughts on that?
I think I pick up on some of the vocabulary Euan Murray used in his interview. He talked about players sloppy, the drop in tempo, that definitely some players went into their shell. It was good that he was honest, and I think it's good that the players are honest with themselves as well, because it did slow right down. And I suppose the question is, who do you think went into their shell? Who slowed right down? Because I think Easton was amazing for me on the game. Some of his first touches and his moving around the pitch was great, but he did slow down a little bit in that same period as everybody else. But I wouldn't say he went into his shell.
So for me, I think, and I'm not one to usually point fingers, and I'm very much about positivity in terms of players, but I felt that, I know that Leslie touched on before, Kieran Freeman, for me there was a period in the second half, and I don't know if whether it's through design or it's just happened naturally, but the ball continued to go, it was usually towards the centre back. Now again, I don't know whether that's by design, and they've sort of said whether he's been told on the pitch, just keep compact, keep your shape, and we'll see this through and we'll get the result, or whether it's just been that he's not willing to take the risk. And I think there is a really big sort of difference between when you look at that and then you see Lewis Gibson, who looked very, very cavalier in terms of what he was trying to do and be bold. And I get they're in different positions. But again, it's Euan Murray's point that I took from that, and I think it's a very, very valid point, is that, look, some of these players have maybe just came in the door and are going to have to adjust to how we play, because that was what he said. He was basically like, look, there's maybe some lads that came into the door, gone into their shells a little bit there, and it's our objective to get them playing how they can. And to Kieran Freeman's credit, if you look at the first 5 minutes, absolutely sublime to get the ball through to Josh Mullen. And then throughout the highlights, if you watch back on the highlights, which is a Rovers fan I did, there were a lot of times where he was aggressive, maybe more than I'm remembering. So I think that often you sort of see these things in the stands and you can get quite biased. So I wouldn't sort of say, oh, it's a lost cause, because it's very much the case that players improve over time, and we saw that with Ross Milne. We've seen that with whether it's Kevin Nisbet, Brian Graham, across the pitch. Even the likes of, a good example for me, again, probably going back in the past, is Rory McEwen. He was paired next to Ross Perry, and he looked absolutely nuclear bad. And then all of a sudden we get a couple of competent centre halves next to him, and the guy's confidence just skyrocketed. Football's very much a confidence game in a lot of cases, and I wouldn't say it's a write-off, but I think it's frustrating when you're a fan in a stand, and I was guilty of this myself. Like, you see the ball going, you're sort of saying, right, is he going to play it forward this time at the later stages of the second half? And then it goes inwards, and you're thinking, come on, hopefully we can be a bit more aggressive. Especially, I
think that's it. I think it's you're disappointed not because they're being bad. You're disappointed because you know it can be so much better.
100%. And again, I don't think that I know that name-checked him, but there are probably others that fall into that category. And I don't know, Euan Murray, again, every single player on that pitch and every single person at the club in terms of the footballing side is going to know a lot more than me about football. I wouldn't be daft on that front. I'm not going to try and coach players or manage players, because frankly, I'm just a dafty in the stands. So yeah, but likewise, I think that as a fan, you've got a bit of a duty to sort of also keep yourself in check and not get too frustrated, recognise that things can change, and that I'm sure that over time it will improve. But yeah, it was an interesting comment, I would say, from Euan Murray, and I would hope it wouldn't come across as sort of singling out one player. So yeah, that would be my sort of thoughts on it. So,
I mean, I would just add to that as well. I mean, one thing Murray's often done in the past is when a player has made a mistake, he said this a lot with Big Kev last season, other people have to have weaknesses for that to happen. And
Yeah.
you could argue as well, okay, a lot of passes were going sideways from the right back position, but that may be because the guys ahead of him aren't moving and looking for the ball.
Yeah, that's true.
That could be, and also to be fair, like something Jim Clark has said an awful lot, other teams are allowed to play well. And fair play to Stranraer, they stopped us playing through. They packed the midfield, they stopped us playing through. I mean, they weren't in our faces and pressing or anything like that, but they did well to keep their shape, stick to their jobs, and disrupt our game. And that didn't help either. So, there's all these factors at play in it as well.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I wouldn't put it as a lost cause or anything, and I wouldn't go out to individually slaughter a player in that manner. I know that we've name checked it, but yeah, I think if that was if Euan Murray was making that comment and you asked me who it was about, automatically that would be my sort of one guess. But again, it's something that the club will discuss internally, I'm sure, and they'll go through their video analysis and they'll try and improve, because that's what they're there to do. And I think as fans, you've got to sort of support that and just get as much behind it as possible. So we'll move on to, I'll just check, has anyone got anything else that they want to cover about that Stranraer match at all, or are we all quite happy?
Just one thing briefly to remember is that, okay, we only just won, but beating teams in lower divisions is not a given in this competition at this stage. So Dundee United lost at the weekend. So Hamilton didn't take anything off Stirling. Stirling have done us a big favour, by the way. Thanks, guys. And I think also, I believe Dunfermline did not get anything out of their game with Forfar. So, getting 6 points from 6, no matter how you do it, by hook or by crook, is not for everyone.
Yeah, it's it was a really good result, that Stirling bonus point against Accies. We were talking before we came on air, and I think for us, as I said before, sort of alluded to it earlier, it puts Rovers in a really good position where we can, if we can look into these final two games, and if we're looking at positive results, whether it's a draw and a bonus point on penalties, or if we beat either of Accies or Ross County, that's us in a very, very solid position to progress to the next round, whether it's best runners up on 9 or 8 points basically, or whether we're looking as going through as outright winners of the group. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be confident about. So turning to the Ross County game now, Carol, Ross County have their summer business. I think the key things to look at are that Simon Murray's gone, he's away to Dundee. Jan Danda's down in Gorgie now at Hearts, and then Conor Randall went off down south as well. So they're no, undoubtedly they're still a threat. I don't think anyone's going to go into that game and think otherwise, but are you quite confident going into Saturday, and do you think it'll be a bit of a different trip up to Dingwall? You hopeful of a different trip up to Dingwall this time?
Yeah, I think so. I was listening to some of the previews of the Premiership, and I'm talking about the different teams, and I think Ross County is definitely a different kettle of fish this season. Not stronger, not in a good way, different kettle of fish. I think they're going to be slightly weaker, and I think they're going to find it. Obviously, they were in the playoffs last season, so they found last season difficult, but I think, again, it's going to be a difficult season for them. So going up on Saturday, I think we can get something from that game. And also, I think we've got something to prove, just that we've done some good business over the summer. We're a bigger, better team than we were at the start of, the end of last season in the playoffs. So yeah, I'm confident.
Yeah, and Leslie, just your thoughts going into this one.
There's not a lot I think we need to be too concerned about. It's a good chance early doors to see how the group of players we have now might measure up against a team that could be close to the bottom end of the Premier League come the end of the season. This is, like Carol says, this is not, to the best of my knowledge, the same Ross County team that only ended up in the playoffs really because they had a nuke of a manager in the mid part of last season. This isn't, they've lost quite a few, and they've lost the captain as well, Jack Baldwin. He's gone to Northampton. I mean, I didn't realise that was actually a footballer.
Yeah, I'm getting Jack Baldwin and Conor Randall mixed up.
Right, aye. So, there's a few of the guys that are away. It's a game we can go into, and if we get a bonus point out of it, great. Even if we avoid getting thumped, it still puts us in a very good position for going through the stages. Unfortunately, I'm away for work this weekend, so I'm going to miss a game close to home, which is a shame. I'm going to miss sampling the delights of the Mallard. But it's usually a nice day out. I've seen some awful things up at Dingwall. I've seen some great things up at Dingwall as well in my time up there. So hopefully everybody that goes up there, hopefully the weather's a bit better and you can have a nice day out in the Highland sunshine.
Yeah, I've only been up to Dingwall once myself. It's a good away day, albeit the last time I went up we lost 4-2. Alan Walker scored directly from a corner and we ended the day bottom of the league. So I'm hoping everyone has a bit of a better experience, which I'm sure they will, than I did last time that I went up.
Can I come in actually at this point? And I'd like to put an appeal out to our listeners for something that I saw in primary school at Dingwall that I'm not entirely sure happened. So anybody who's a bit older and has got a bit of a longer memory, and anybody particularly who might have been associated with the club, please tell me if this is true. So this was sometime in the season that we won the cup. After we won the cup, we were up in Dingwall midweek for a friendly. So it was Ross County against Raith Rovers. I don't know it was a testimonial or something. It was a friendly for some reason. It may have been something to do with Bobby Wilson, I don't know. The only Rovers fans in the ground were me and my dad. And I had my Rovers top, I had my scarf, I had my little gloves and everything. So we were the only fans there. And this was a friendly. I see Robbie's got always next season out. Great.
You're
this was a
right.
Friendly. And Mickey Cameron absolutely halved a guy to the extent that the referee told him he had to be subbed off, and the guy he halved in a friendly had to be stretchered off in a friendly. It then gets to full time, and the club brings the cup out with the ribbon still on it. Jimmy Nicholl spots me in my scarf and my top and brings me onto the pitch to lift the cup. This is unfortunately prior to the days of phones and camera phones, so there's no evidence of this other than Jimmy Nicholl having signed a bit of paper for me. But a very, very surreal but very fun evening, apart from for the boy that got halved by Mickey. So if anybody out there has got any more context as to what actually happened here and can fill in the blanks for me, I would be very, very grateful.
You sure you didn't steal a few of those Belgian beers, Liz?
Quite possibly. I mean, I was about 10 at the time. So
well, my abiding memory of Jimmy Nicholl in friendlies was I went to watch Raith against Dunfermline in a reserves game, and I couldn't only have been about, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like that. And a ball got stuck under the seat in the railway stand next to me, trying to fish it out, and Jimmy Nicholl was going mental because I wasn't doing it quick enough. But fair enough. I was, but yeah. Yeah, that's a story and a half there, Les. I'd be interested to hear if we can get club historian and fellow Oh No podcaster John Greer on that one. So I'm sure he'll keep you up to speed. So yeah, just to go back to our trip to Dingwall, Paul Hanlon might be back for this one. Would you risk him for this, Leslie, or would you, given the Fordyce and Murray have started so strongly together, are you?
I think it depends. The word is it depends. If Hanlon is 100% fit, and if it's like Pro Evo Soccer, he's got the wee red arrow, then yeah, get him on, get him playing, and see if we can use a bit of his experience to get some points and some momentum. If he's not 100%, I think stick with what we have. Murray, Fordyce have done a fantastic job, and there's no need to risk Hanlon. So, as I say, for me, it comes down purely to if Hanlon is 100% or not.
Yeah, I think that's it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we decided to err on the side of caution with that one and just keep our powder dry in terms of Paul Hanlon, because the quicker he's at full fitness and just ready to come in, it's going to be better in the long term for Rovers. So I'm just going to check with you. Have either of you got lineups prepared for this one?
We do. I do. I'm saying we, as in
we.
Assuming Leslie does.
Leslie's frozen and open. He's not had time to think about that. He's thinking about where he can get the most woolly blankets from. Carol, we'll start with you.
So I've gone Dabrowski at the back. I'm going to put Dick out from the beginning. Murray for Dice, Freeman, Brown, Easton. I can't make a decision between Byrne and Matthews. I think one will start and one will finish. Mullen, Stanton, Connolly. I think the same. One will start, one will finish. I don't know who will start and finish, but I think that will be the combo. And Smith up front. depending, obviously, because Hamilton's picked up that little bit of a niggle. But if Hamilton's improved, he might be on the bench. And again, I think it'll be Smith and Hamilton. I don't know who'll start and I don't know who'll finish.
Yeah.
I think now with lineups, I'm going to go for a little bit of a combo who I think might be starting or finishing, because I think it's a squad game now. It's not it's a cop out.
It's changed quite a lot compared to last season, let's put it that way. And Leslie, what about for you? Have you got any changes in terms of your starting 11? Or?
I think we go with a strong starting lineup because, like I say, this is our chance to play a competitive game against a side that are maybe a wee bit ahead of us in one league above us before the season starts. And that's a real chance to test where we've got to. So I think we go Dubrovsky in goals, a back four of Stevenson, Murray, Fordyce and Freeman. Brown and Byrne at the base of the midfield. We go Easton on the left, Stanton in the centre, Connolly on the right, and I think we start with Callum Smith up top.
Yeah, I think that I would be looking very, very similar to yourself, Leslie, in terms of my starting 11. I've not actually done one in terms of getting ready for the podcast. But yeah, I think that for me, I think it's a good opportunity. The players will all know, like, first and foremost, look, you put yourself in pole position to get into the next round of the Cup. Like, a win here and that's us pretty much through effectively, barring any sort of like big goal difference. On top of that, you've also got the factor of, like, look, this club, really the playoffs were not a 6-1 game, was it, of the piece. There was no chance there was that big a gap between the sides. Ross County were better, but I think that you look at them selling the likes of Danda and Simon Murray, and they should be looking at that and thinking, yeah, we can really do some justice here and show what we're really all about and kick on. So yeah, I would hope for a positive result, and I'll be tuning in. I'll not be travelling up to the Highlands. Fair play to anyone that is, because it's some effort to get up there. But yeah, I'm very hopeful for a positive result. So predictions wise, I am going to go with a 2-1 Rovers win again. So Carol, you got any prediction for yourself?
1-1 and we'll get the bonus point.
I'd take that. And Leslie?
I was going to go with exactly the same as Carol. I was going to go with one of the bonus point, but just to be a bit more contrarian, I will go with 2-2 and us to get the bonus point in the penalty shootout.
Hopefully a big Kev penalty kick at some point as well. So if that came to pass, I would be delighted. So if you are going up to the Dingwalls, as I say, safe travels, and hopefully you have a very enjoyable afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to listen. As ever, you know the drill. We can be found on Twitter. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube. We've still not managed to claw back that, 600 odd behind Callum that we are. So a lot of work to be done there. And if he does, he might make his bed for once. And then on top of that, we've got the Instagram run by Carol and the Etsy shop as well, where we are sort of using the funding. As I say, we're still working in terms of player sponsorship and things like that at the moment. Looking ahead to that and announcing a bit more detail soon. But as ever, thanks for taking the time to listen, and have a good weekend, and bye for now.
Ciao, ciao.